Hello, and welcome to our third video in our Digital Portfolio Basics with Google Slides tutorial series. This video will be focusing on creating typeface and font palettes. So, over the last few videos, you've learned a little bit about what color palettes and typeface palettes are. You also learned a little bit about how to create a color palette. And now today, you will be learning about how to create a font palette that will make your project stand out. Let's freshen up our memory a little bit as to what a typeface or a font palette is. If you remember from prior videos, a typeface or a font palette is simply a collection of fonts that are carefully chosen to help give your project a unique and consistent look and feel. The combinations of fonts that you will find out there are endless, so don't get too lost in trying to find the perfect combination because it is a learning process. You will learn over time, the more you try combining different fonts, that some work together and some do not. So, because of that, we'll be using fontpairs.co to help you choose your first selection of fonts. Now, no more talking, let's get started. In our last video, you learned how to take an image from Google search and create a color palette from that image by using the tool coolors.co. Now that you have a color palette, it is time for us to select a font palette or a typeface palette. If you remember from our previous videos, a typeface palette is nothing more than a collection of fonts that you use to give your presentation a consistent look and feel. What we're going to do now is I'd like for you to open up your project where you created your color palette and let's create a new blank slide. Instead of clicking on the plus button, I want you to click on the little drop down next to the plus button and go down to where it says blank. Now that you have a blank slide, let's go ahead and click the text box icon up here. And when you click on that, your mouse is going to change to a little plus sign. And when that happens, what I want you to do is in your slide, just click and drag and create a space for us to type into. I'd like for you to type in the following: X for headings, Y for subheadings, and Z for body. X, Y, and Z are just going to be placeholders for when we find the names of our fonts, we can just change these letters out, okay? Now that you have your text box and you're ready to put some fonts in here, what I want you to do is we're going to open a new tab by either clicking this button next to your Open tab or clicking Command or Control T to create a new tab. In this new tab, what I'd like for you to do is go to the following website, fontpair.co. Once you are here, in a nutshell, what this website does is it takes all Google fonts that exist in the Google library and it pairs them for you. So that way you don't have to do all of this work, and no matter which pair you select, it will always work and it will always look good. So with that said, what I'm going to ask you to do is you are going to take some time and just scroll through and find some pairings that you like. If you cannot find a pairing right off the top, what you can do is you can go ahead and sort your search results so that you can find different pairings. So in my case, I like display font. So I'm going to click display and sans serif. Now, you may find that while you are doing this, you're going to see the words sans serif and serif a lot. Now, because of this video, we're not going to get into detail, but what I want you to do is take some time, pause this video, and go to Google and research what is the difference between serif, S-E-R-I-F, and sans serif, S-A-N-S-S-E-R-I-F. And once you've done that, come back and let's continue looking for your pairing. So I'm going to scroll through here and let's see which pairing I like. So I really like, let's say this one here, flamenco for heading and ASAP for body. Now, how do I get this pairing over to my slide? Easy. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create what I like to call a workspace. I like being able to, instead of switching between both of these tabs, I want to work with them side by side. So what I want you to do now is, if you can, on your screen, is minimize your Chrome window a little bit. And then take the font pair tab, click and drag it out and drag it side by side. So that way on one window you'll have your digital portfolio and on the other window you'll have font pair. Now that you've done that, what we're going to do here is we are going to transfer the information over. Before you finalize pairing, what I ask you do is if you go in and highlight the text within font pair, you can actually change it so you can see what that would look like. And you can go ahead and play around with as many combinations as you like until you find one that works. But for now, I'm going to go with flamenco for heading and ASAP for body. So what I'm going to do now is where it says X for headings, I'm going to highlight the word X and change that to flamenco for headings. And then I'm going to skip subheadings for now and move over to Z. So I want you to select the letter Z. And we are going to change that to ASAP, right? Because that's the name of the font that we'll be using for body. Now that you've done that, you're not going to need font pair anymore for now. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to drag this tab right back in and continue working on my portfolio as I was before. Now that we have your fonts written in, what we're going to do now is change the actual font for headings. So I'm going to highlight this entire row and I'm going to go to my library of fonts, which is over here up top next to the font size. When you click on it, it's going to give you a drop down of all the fonts you currently have available. So let's find flamenco. Flamenco, here it goes. I already have it, so I do not need to add it. If for some reason the font that you are looking for is not in your library, what you can do is you click more fonts down here and it'll open up your Google font library. And in this case, we're going to be using flamenco. So you type the name of your font, and if you do not have it, you want to go ahead and click and make sure that it has a blue check next to it. Then I'm going to also check to see if I have ASAP, which I do. I have 2 ASAP fonts, which is good. So once you make sure that your fonts are in the system, you can go ahead and highlight flamenco for headings or whatever font you chose, and go down to the drop down of fonts and select that font. So let's see, flamenco, here it goes. And remember, when you have headings, your heading is the largest font in your project, which means any heading that you put in, you want to make sure it is bigger than your subheadings and your body, okay? Usually I like making headings bold so that they can stand out. And if you add bold, italics, or something like this to your font, make sure you include that in the name. So now my heading font is actually flamenco bold. For my body, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight, go to my fonts, find ASAP, here it is, and I'm going to select it. And now my body font is set to ASAP. Body font is the smallest font in your project, which means most of the time it can either be anywhere from size 10 to size 12. You make that call depending on what project you're working on. Now that I have a heading font and a body font, choosing the subheading font is a little different because that's not on font pair. So what we're going to do is whenever you create a subheading, it is important that your font for subheadings is either your heading font or your body font, but styled differently. So take a look at this. For my subheading, I am going to use ASAP. And if you notice, some fonts have little arrows next to them. When you select these fonts, it gives you different options for that font, right? So in this case, right now, ASAP Normal is exactly the same as body, but I need the two to stand out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight, and then I'm just going to put it in italics because that's a different way of looking at ASAP font. Once I'm done, I'm going to change this Y to, you guessed it, ASAP italics for subheadings. And when you're done, go to the very end of your subheading line and hit enter. And you have just created your very first typeface palette. I hope this was helpful, and see you in the next video where you will learn how to combine your typeface palette along with your colors in order to put together a combination that will make your presentation stand out. Now that you've completed the third video in our training series, it is time for you to learn how to combine your typeface palettes with your color palettes in order to make your project stand out.